Right, now across Africa, women remain underrepresented in key areas of leadership, from political power and economic opportunity to access to land and finance. But a bold new Pan-African initiative is looking to change that. The Heritage Collective has launched its flagship salon-style event, Her Circle. And this is all happening in Abidjan, creating an international space that not only invites women to the table, but also encourages them to design it themselves. Described as a disruption to the status quo, Her Circle is bringing together women from across the continent to reimagine leadership, influence policy, and strengthen support networks through storytelling, collaboration, and collective power. Well, to tell us a little bit more about this initiative and what it hopes to achieve, we're now joined by Sally Nnamani, who's a Nigerian-American social entrepreneur, Chief Partnerships and External Officer at Peace Players International, and one of the co-conveners of behind the Heritage Collective. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mabu. Thank you so much for having me. And before we jump into questions and speaking about the Heritage Collective and who we are and what our vision is, I'm joined by one of my co-convener, Habibah Waziri. In fact, Habibah is the visionary force behind the Heritage Collective. We've all been good friends for a while and kind of all work in different spaces, but also all have the same values and objectives with how we see women in leadership. And so we brought our minds, our brilliance and intelligence together to create the Heritage Collective. So Habibah and I are in town together right now, and I thought it was best to have her be part of the conversation today.
All right, fantastic. Habibah, welcome to you as well. Good to have you on board. So let's start here. Habibah, maybe let's start with you then. Take us into the heart of this initiative. What is this Heritage Collective, and what inspired the creation of Her Circle?
Thank you, Mabu. That's a very good question. Good morning to your viewers. So the Heritage Collective exists to close the gap between access and ambition for emerging African women on the continent and in the diaspora. Of course, we're open to other, all types of women, but that's really our core focus. Why it started was because at the UNGA last year, we had friends that were in town, friends that were also attending the UNGA for the first time, and I was supposed to have enough time to take everyone around, but then I couldn't. And of course, people like my friends who are dear to me, couldn't make time because they were also busy. So I decided to just start a WhatsApp group. And then I just started sharing my personal invitations to, the events, especially the ones that were Africa focused, to, other friends on the group. And then I just started pulling in more friends, and then they started bringing in more friends. And before you know it, we were slightly under 50 people, 50 women on the group, discussing Africa, making sure our voices were there. We were going to closed door events because we had access to the RSVPs on time. And this just turned into something bigger than us. It was honestly just a simple group chat that was just making sure we were at the right place at the right time. And it turned out to be that the need was there in New York and back at home. And that's how the Heritage Collective started.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about Her Circle now. Sally, the language used to describe Her Circle is powerful. It's called a disruption and a space to design the table. What does that mean practically for African women leaders?
Yeah, so often when we go to high-level events, you find that there's a panel, there are maybe women or men who are well along in their careers who are speaking about, what they've done or what they're currently doing. And there are few opportunities for women who are kind of emerging, who are in the room to share their journey, to share their experiences, and to feel like they belong on those platforms. And so we wanted to completely take away the hierarchy within these spaces. And also to celebrate, to create an opportunity for women and men, women especially at different points in their careers, to be in the same room as even more accomplished women, and really take away that hierarchy, that feeling of, she's far along, she's there, and I'm here. and we're here on the same level playing field, and put out questions, what we call spark questions, to begin to break down and demystify what it means to be at the top of your game. Right. And we remember when we were just starting out our careers as interns or as volunteers or just at very younger points in our careers and feeling like, certain heights were unattainable. And that's because it felt, the journey from where we started to where we wanted to go felt so far. But being in the same room and the same spaces as people who've done it, who also share similar challenges as us, kind of humanizes the journey.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to bring into these spaces is less hierarchy, more this is the raw truth, this is what it takes, and here's how you can build your own path. And that's what her circle is about. We kicked it off in Abidjan, but we're looking forward to like the other kind of next iterations of it, and to continue to fine tune it. But ultimately, at the crux of what we're doing is less hierarchy and more authenticity. More, this is the path to influence, and we'll help you get there through our networks and through upscaling as well.
So, Habibah, we know that, the message you're giving me is quite inspiring and empowering. But we know, sadly, that there are some systemic issues, barriers to leadership, like access to capital, networks, land ownership, and dare I say, even patriarchy. How does her circle work to break down some of these barriers?
So a lot of times we like to focus on the negatives, or I guess you would say the challenges. What we try to, push forward at the collective is the fact that, I have some kind of experience, Sally has some kind of experience, the rest of our members of our collective have some kind of experience, but we are willing to help. We are willing to start somewhere. There's always going to be a challenge one way or the other. Access to capital is one, and I think it doesn't only affect women. Of course, it affects women more. However, some of our first sponsors, actually our second sponsor for the event is actually third, second, third. They're all male. They're all male. They all run successful companies, and it wasn't really difficult to convince them because, it was just, how do I say this? It was just there, and there was no way they could say no. It was just a very simple concept that made sense to them because a lot of the people that we know are pro-women and they support women's initiatives, and they also support people like myself. They've given me opportunities before. They've given other people opportunities before. So it just didn't make sense for them to say no. Of course, skills, and then when you say things like land, there's always going to be a challenge somewhere. But if we're willing to put in the work and we're willing to use our own networks and our resources, a lot of times we always tend to forget the male allies when we're talking about women-focused events, but the male allies are right there with us. Our male allies are right there with us. Of course, our first sponsor was a woman. Our lead sponsor that came on board was a woman. But at the end of the day, a lot of the conversations ended up being around the men also encouraging the women, because we know we can't do it alone. We're not trying to create another niche. By separating the men. That's not what we're trying to do. We want to work together, and we definitely don't want to do it by ourselves.
So, Sally, there's a strong Pan-African focus to this movement with conveners and participants from across the continent and even the diaspora. How important is it to have this cross-border, cross-sector collaboration? And are you finding that the struggle is more or less the same across borders?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm probably more the challenges are probably more steep for young women on the continent, right? Where some of our kind of deep-seated hierarchies in our cultures sometimes even limit women's belief in their possibilities for themselves. And so, like through the collective and events and programming that we plan to host with the collective, part of that is mindset. Right, it's creating that environment where you're in a room filled with women who are empowered. That energy, rubs off on you. And so, to speak to the Pan-African part of it, and also the pillars of the collective, it's first is access and opportunity and exposure, and that pillar is really about being in the room, seeing women who you might admire or women who have similar or different paths to you, and seeing what it took in their journey to kind of self-actualize, and recognizing that there's probably more similarities in you between you and them than you might think. The second is visibility and voice. So when you're in the room, using your voice, feeling confident in that voice, no matter how scary and challenging it might feel, knowing that you have a voice that is important and is needed to shape the future of the continent. And the third is collective growth, right? We're in different sectors, different points of leadership. But again, in order to move the work forward and create more access and more seats for women in decision-making rooms, we have to think about it from a collective standpoint and not from it can only be me as standpoint. And so part of that capacity and collective growth is we all bring different expertise to the collective. And what we want to do is democratize access to that expertise.
Ladies,
right? So
I wish we could carry on for much longer, but we've run out of time, sadly. But thank you so much for sharing this powerful story, inspirational, and we wish you the best of luck with this movement.
Thank you so much for having us. And
so
you can find us on LinkedIn, The Heritage Collective, on Instagram.
The Heritage Collective.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Sally and Habibah. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time.